By the spring of 1941, Britain was teetering on the brink of disaster in the Battle of the Atlantic. While the German U-boats were sinking Allied merchant shipping at an unsustainable rate, the threat posed by German surface raiders was equally severe. The Royal Navy had to devote critical resources to protect convoys from powerful German battleships, knowing that if a major surface raider escaped into the open Atlantic, it could single-handedly destroy the logistical lifeline of food and material flowing from the United States and the Commonwealth. At the heart of this fear was the German Navy's newest and most formidable weapon, the battleship Bismarck. Launched in 1939, the Bismarck was, at over 50,000 tons, the largest and most powerful surface warship afloat. Armed with 8 massive 15-inch guns and protected by immense armor plating, it was designed to be virtually unsinkable and capable of outgunning any Allied capital ship it encountered. The ship's sheer size, speed, and immense striking power made its successful deployment an existential threat to Britain. In May 1941, the nightmare scenario became reality. The Bismarck, accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, launched Operation Rainabung, a mission to break out into the North Atlantic and begin a campaign of devastation against the Allied merchant convoys. The strategic goal of the German Navy was clear: sever Britain's transatlantic supply lines completely, forcing the island nation into submission. The movement of the massive, fast-moving German ships was quickly detected by Allied intelligence, triggering an immediate naval crisis. The reaction from the British High Command was one of immediate, profound alarm. Winston Churchill himself issued a famous order: sink the Bismarck. Recognizing the unparalleled threat posed by the warship, the entire available strength of the Royal Navy was mobilized. Battleships, battlecruisers, aircraft carriers, and destroyers were all diverted from crucial convoy duties and deployed into the North Atlantic, tasked with hunting down and destroying the powerful German beast before it could unleash its full destructive potential on the Allied supply lines. The first contact was made by Royal Navy heavy cruisers near the Arctic Circle, south of Norway. A long, stressful shadowing operation began as the cruisers continuously tracked the powerful Bismarck and its escort, the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen. Maintaining constant contact with the high-speed German ships without being detected was a profound challenge, demanding immense skill and endurance from the small, isolated British surveillance crews who were fully aware of the crushing firepower of their targets. The interception point was set for the Denmark Strait, the narrow, icy passage between Greenland and Iceland. Here, the Royal Navy deployed 2 massive warships to prevent the Bismarck from breaking out into the open Atlantic: the venerable battlecruiser HMS Hood, the symbol of British naval might, and the newly commissioned battleship HMS Prince of Wales. The confrontation was set to be the defining naval battle of the early war, pitting the pride of the British fleet against the technological superiority of the German beast. The Battle of the Denmark Strait erupted on May 24, 1941. The German gunnery proved devastatingly accurate. Within minutes of the opening salvo, the Bismarck fired a critical shell that plunged through the thin deck armor of HMS Hood and ignited the ship's massive magazine. The resulting explosion ripped the battlecruiser completely in half, sinking the ship in under 3 minutes with the loss of over 1,400 men. The catastrophic, sudden loss of the HMS Hood sent a shockwave of terror and determination through the Royal Navy and the entire British High Command. The remaining British battleship, HMS Prince of Wales, took heavy damage and was forced to break off the engagement. However, in the chaos, the HMS Prince of Wales managed to score a crucial, decisive hit on the Bismarck, striking its forward fuel tanks and forcing a significant leak of precious oil. This damage, though not immediately fatal, compelled the Bismarck to abandon its original raiding mission and make a sharp turn towards occupied France for urgent repairs. The mighty battleship was wounded, and the massive, desperate hunt was now fully engaged. Following the catastrophic Battle of the Denmark Strait, the massive German battleship Bismarck was wounded but far from defeated. The critical hit sustained on its fuel tanks forced a dangerous leak and compelled the German command to abandon the raiding mission. The Bismarck detached its cruiser escort, Prinz Eugen, ordering it to continue raiding independently, while the battleship itself turned south, aiming for the relative safety and repair docks of German-occupied France. The entire Royal Navy fleet was now desperately focused on tracking the wounded beast before it could escape. However, the Bismarck performed a brilliant, high-speed maneuver and briefly managed to evade the two Royal Navy heavy cruisers that were shadowing it. Using evasive action and taking advantage of the rough seas and low visibility, the massive battleship suddenly disappeared from British radar screens. The British Admiralty was plunged into a state of panic. The Bismarck had vanished into the vast North Atlantic, free to choose its own path to the U-boat lanes or the French coast. A frantic, massive search operation, involving dozens of Royal Navy ships and Royal Air Force aircraft, immediately commenced across the immense, empty ocean. The British desperation was palpable. The loss of contact with the world's most powerful warship presented an existential threat, forcing the Royal Navy to mobilize every available battleship and aircraft carrier within range, forming converging lines of search across hundreds of miles of the Atlantic. The primary fear was that the Bismarck would succeed in linking up with German U-boat wolf packs, where its overwhelming surface firepower could annihilate any attacking Allied naval force before reaching the safety of a fortified French port. The crisis ended after a grueling 30 hours of fruitless searching. The Bismarck was finally located by a keen-eyed aircrew flying a Catalina flying boat belonging to the Royal Air Force. The patrol aircraft spotted the battleship's distinctive wake and correctly relayed its updated position, taking immense risk in doing so. This crucial sighting, made over 700 miles from France, provided the Royal Navy with the vital coordinates needed to redirect its main hunting fleet, ensuring that the nets slowly closed around the wounded, but still deadly, German warship. With the Bismarck successfully relocated, the Royal Navy immediately executed its massive plan to close the net. All available major warships, including the powerful battleships HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, were redirected to converge on the German battleship's position. Time was now the critical factor. The hunting ships had to engage the Bismarck before it could reach the safety of the German-controlled air cover near the French coast. The entire British command was now relying on speed and coordination to corner the wounded giant. The first attempt to slow the Bismarck came from the air, launched from the aircraft carrier HMS Ark Royal. However, the initial airstrike was disastrous. Torpedo planes, the slow, fabric-covered biplanes, Fairy Swordfish, were launched in immense anticipation, but due to severe weather and poor visibility, the aircrews tragically mistook the Royal Navy cruiser HMS Sheffield for the Bismarck. The Swordfish crews narrowly avoided a devastating friendly fire incident, proving the extreme difficulty of operating in the mid-Atlantic weather conditions. Despite the near tragedy, the air support pressed on, knowing that without slowing the Bismarck, the massive German battleship would escape. A second wave of Fairy Swordfish was launched in the late afternoon of May 26, 1941. The aircrews faced intense anti-aircraft fire and poor visibility, but they bravely pressed their low-level attack against the massive warship. The slow, seemingly outdated biplanes proved surprisingly difficult for the Bismarck's modern guns to hit effectively. The persistence of the air attack paid off with catastrophic consequences for the German ship. One single torpedo struck the Bismarck's stern, and although the warhead did not cause a massive explosion, the damage was strategically fatal. The force of the impact jammed the battleship's rudder mechanisms, locking them into a turn. The once fast and formidable Bismarck was instantly crippled, rendered completely unsteerable, and forced to steam in endless circles in the vast North Atlantic. The net had closed, and the final assault was now inevitable. With its rudder jammed and its speed crippled, the mighty Bismarck was now helpless, steaming slowly in circles across the vast North Atlantic. The final night of May 26, 1941, saw the German battleship subjected to relentless harassment by a screen of Royal Navy destroyers. These smaller, faster vessels circled the immobilized giant, launching torpedoes and keeping the exhausted German Navy crews awake and under constant tension. This continuous assault ensured that the Bismarck received no respite, and could not attempt any temporary repairs to its rudder mechanism before the final British battleships arrived. The decisive, final confrontation began at dawn on May 27, 1941. The two powerful Royal Navy battleships, HMS King George V and HMS Rodney, closed in on the crippled Bismarck to deliver the coup de grace. The Bismarck was severely limited in its ability to fight. Its lack of maneuverability meant it could not effectively train its massive guns on the rapidly approaching British ships, allowing the Royal Navy to dictate the terms of the final battle. The German warship was now fighting only for its pride and endurance. The surface bombardment that followed was swift, devastating, and relentless. The British battleships, firing at relatively close range, subjected the Bismarck to an overwhelming barrage of 16-inch and 14-inch shells. The heavy armor plating, which had been its primary defense, was systematically peeled back by the continuous, high-caliber hits. The Bismarck's massive gun turrets were destroyed or jammed, the superstructure was reduced to burning wreckage, and all internal command centers were eliminated. The once proud German flagship was quickly reduced to a burning, silent hulk. The Royal Navy battleships eventually ceased fire, having realized that the Bismarck was no longer capable of resistance. The ship was utterly defeated, its guns silenced, and its flag shot away. Yet, in a final testament to its incredible armor and construction, the massive warship still refused to sink. The final destruction of the Bismarck would require a closer range action by the accompanying Royal Navy cruisers, who prepared to launch torpedoes to finally send the crippled beast to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. With the Bismarck reduced to a silent, smoking wreck, the Royal Navy battleships, having expended immense ammunition, withdrew from the immediate vicinity. The task of delivering the final, definitive blow was assigned to the accompanying heavy cruiser HMS Dorsetshire. The cruiser closed in on the defeated German flagship, which was visibly listing and engulfed in fire, and launched a final, decisive salvo of torpedoes aimed directly at the Bismarck's waterline. The immense warship finally succumbed. Struck by 2 or 3 torpedoes at close range, the Bismarck began a rapid capsize. It rolled violently onto its side, turning completely over before its massive hull slipped beneath the waves of the North Atlantic. The sinking occurred at 10:40 a.m. on May 27, 1941, taking the greatest German Navy surface threat to the bottom of the ocean, nearly 3 miles deep. The brief, terrifying life of the seemingly unsinkable battleship was over. The human cost of this sinking was catastrophic. Out of a crew of over 2,200 men who had started the mission, only about 114 were ultimately pulled from the freezing water alive by the Royal Navy ships. Hundreds of German sailors were left struggling in the water, suffering from wounds and hypothermia. The immediate brutality of the naval warfare meant that the immense loss of life was unavoidable and total. The subsequent events added a layer of tragedy to the victory. The Royal Navy ships, already damaged and low on fuel, were soon forced to abandon the massive, ongoing rescue operation due to the clear danger of German U-boat counterattack. This agonizing decision left hundreds of surviving German sailors to perish in the cold Atlantic waters, a grim but necessary military calculation that cemented the terrible finality of the naval confrontation. The sinking of the Bismarck immediately sent ripples of celebration across Britain and brought profound shock to Germany. For the British, the news of the defeat of the most powerful German warship provided a massive, desperately needed morale victory, proving that the Royal Navy still ruled the waves and could eliminate any threat Adolf Hitler could produce. For the German High Command, the loss was a devastating blow to naval prestige, confirming the immense risk involved in deploying capital ships into the open Atlantic, and reinforcing Hitler's mistrust of his own surface fleet. The significance of the sinking went beyond mere tonnage. The destruction of the Bismarck proved the vulnerability of even the largest, most heavily armored warships to coordinated, determined air and sea attacks. The single, decisive torpedo that crippled the battleship's rudder was delivered by the slow, archaic Fairey Swordfish biplanes, an aircraft already considered obsolete. This outcome reinforced the growing realization within naval circles that air power, even from carrier-based aircraft, had become the definitive factor in naval engagements, overshadowing the traditional dominance of the battleship. This sinking marked a fundamental strategic shift for the German Navy. The loss of the Bismarck, followed later by further British successes, effectively ended the era of large-scale surface commerce raiding in the Atlantic. Grand Admiral Karl Donitz and the German High Command increasingly focused all naval resources on the U-boat fleet, realizing that submersible wolf packs offered a more effective, survivable, and continuous threat to Allied supply lines. This concentration of effort on submarine warfare ironically allowed the Royal Navy to also concentrate its focus on anti-submarine defense. While the Bismarck met its ultimate, tragic fate, its accompanying cruiser, Prinz Eugen, successfully evaded the overwhelming Royal Navy pursuit. Prinz Eugen managed to slip through the dragnet and safely reached a port in occupied France. Although it was severely damaged by the time it arrived, its escape highlighted the massive scale of the search operation and the complexity of naval warfare. The Prinz Eugen would later be a target of numerous Allied raids, but it never again participated in a mission of the strategic magnitude of the Bismarck's breakout. The incredible story of the Bismarck's short life and violent death gained a final, fascinating layer decades after World War II. The question of how the massive ship sank, solely by Royal Navy action or by its own crew, was debated for years. Deep-sea explorations conducted by teams, including those led by Dr. Robert Ballard in 1989, confirmed that while the British bombardment had critically disabled the battleship, the German Navy crew likely opened the final sea valves to scuttle the vessel. The sinking was ultimately a combination of overwhelming battle damage and a final, deliberate act of defiance to prevent capture. The Bismarck remains a somber historical monument, resting nearly 3 miles deep on the seabed of the North Atlantic Ocean. The vast wreckage is surprisingly intact, standing upright as a testament to the colossal power and advanced engineering of the early warship. It serves as the final resting place for over 2,000 German sailors and stands as a powerful, chilling reminder of the immense human cost of the high-stakes naval pursuit that consumed the Atlantic Ocean in 1941. The strategic legacy of the sinking was immediate and profound. The destruction of the Bismarck marked the definitive end of the brief, intense threat posed by large German surface raiders in the Atlantic Ocean. The German Navy never again successfully deployed a similar threat to the crucial Allied supply convoys. This pivotal victory was a defining moment for the Royal Navy, earning Winston Churchill's gratitude and ensuring the logistical backbone of the Allied war effort remained secure. The enduring narrative of the hunt for the Bismarck, the initial shock of the HMS Hood sinking, the frantic 30-hour search, the fatal torpedo hit delivered by the obsolete biplanes, and the final, brutal surface engagement, created one of World War II's most dramatic and globally recognized naval narratives. The saga remains a testament to the immense strategic importance of sea power and the lengths to which the Royal Navy went to eliminate an existential threat, securing a crucial victory that fundamentally influenced the outcome of the war.